I'm Haley Mitchell, 24 years old, and until last month I was the good daughter in my family. I just graduated from nursing school with honors while my older sister Natalie was always the troublemaker. But beneath our perfect suburban family image lurked a disturbing reality I never saw coming. My life shattered when police officers burst into my bedroom at 6 a.m., finding drugs I'd never seen before hidden in my bookshelf. The worst part? Seeing my sister smirking in the hallway as my own parents instantly believed I was guilty. If you're watching this right now, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this family betrayal turned my entire life upside down. Growing up in our affluent Boston suburb, the Mitchell family appeared picture-perfect from the outside. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and my father's BMW in the driveway projected success and stability. My father, Robert Mitchell, built his reputation as a cutthroat corporate attorney at one of Boston's prestigious law firms. My mother, Diana, sold luxury real estate to the city's elite. They were both perfectionists who valued appearance above almost everything else. Then there were us daughters. Natalie, 3 years older than me, was always the troubled one. Even as children, the pattern was clear. She resented any attention I received. When I was 7 and she was 10, I remember bringing home an award for perfect attendance and good citizenship. My parents hung it on the refrigerator, and that night I found it torn to pieces in the trash. When I tearfully told my parents, my mother sighed and said, "Haley, don't be so dramatic. Natalie's just going through a phase. You need to be more understanding of your sister." That phase never ended. Throughout elementary school, Natalie would take my homework and rip it up if she got a bad grade. In middle school, she started spreading rumors about me to my friends. By high school, she was regularly stealing my clothes and returning them damaged. But the worst incident happened during my sophomore year, when I spent months working on a science project about water pollution that was selected for the state competition. The night before the competition, I came home from study group to find my project destroyed. Water samples spilled, display board cut up, and my research journal soaking wet. Natalie claimed our dog knocked it over, but we both knew the truth. Instead of supporting me, my parents just shrugged and said, "You should have kept it somewhere safer, Haley. And maybe this is a sign you need to focus more on practical skills than science experiments." Despite these challenges, I worked hard in school. I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and earned a partial scholarship to nursing school. Meanwhile, Natalie dropped out of 3 different colleges, cycled through countless jobs, and developed what I later realized was a serious substance abuse problem. Yet somehow, my parents always minimized her issues while holding me to impossible standards. "Natalie's just finding herself," my mother would say when my sister lost another job or boyfriend. "Not everyone figures life out as easily as you do, Haley." But I hadn't figured life out easily. I worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop while maintaining my grades in nursing school. I studied until 2 a.m. regularly. I did clinical rotations that left me emotionally and physically drained. Meanwhile, my parents paid Natalie's rent when she couldn't hold a job, bought her a new car when she crashed her old one driving under the influence, and gave her seemingly unlimited chances. The dynamics reached a breaking point when Natalie moved back home at 27, supposedly to save money. By then, I had just graduated nursing school with honors and received an incredible job offer from Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the top hospitals in the country. When I announced my news at dinner, my father nodded absently and said, "That's nice, Haley." My mother added, "Just remember not to get too caught up in your career. There's more to life than work." That same week, Natalie got hired at a local clothing boutique, and my parents took the entire family out to celebrate at an expensive restaurant. They toasted her fresh start and entrepreneurial spirit. For a retail position she would end up quitting 3 weeks later. I tried not to let it bother me. I focused on preparing for my new job, studying for my nursing licensure exam, and finding an apartment I could afford in Boston's expensive housing market. I was staying with my parents temporarily to save money, sleeping in my childhood bedroom that still had my high school textbooks on the shelves and nursing school certificates on the walls. I was so close to finally having the independent life I'd worked for. Then came the night that changed everything. My parents hosted a family dinner celebrating Natalie's 1-month work anniversary, at the boutique. Throughout dinner, Natalie seemed jittery and kept excusing herself to go to the bathroom. When she returned, her pupils would be pinpoints or extremely dilated. I recognized the signs from my nursing training but kept quiet. Confronting her would only cause a scene, and my parents would inevitably take her side. Little did I know Natalie wasn't just using that night. She was executing a plan that would nearly destroy my life. The evening before everything fell apart had felt particularly tense. During the celebration dinner for Natalie's retail job, I noticed she disappeared to the bathroom every 20 minutes or so. Each time she returned, her behavior would shift subtly, sometimes more energetic, sometimes more focused. As a newly graduated nurse, the signs were unmistakable. But I'd learned long ago that pointing out Natalie's problems only made me the target of my family's frustration. "I'm thinking of redesigning my room," Natalie announced during dessert, picking at her chocolate cake without actually eating it. "Maybe paint it that sage green color that's popular now." "That sounds lovely, sweetheart," my mother said. "We could go shopping for new bedding this weekend." "Haley, don't you think that would look nice?" Natalie asked, her eyes challenging me. "Sure," I replied neutrally, finishing my water. "Listen, I should head to bed. I have that second interview at Mass General tomorrow morning." My father barely looked up from his phone. "You're leaving already? Your sister is trying to include you in her plans." I forced a smile. "Sorry, but I need to prepare. It's a really important interview." "Always so serious," Natalie said with a dramatic sigh. "All work and no play." As I headed upstairs, I heard my mother say, "She's always been like that. So focused on herself." I closed my bedroom door, fighting back tears of frustration. They never saw how hard I worked or how much I'd accomplished. I reviewed my interview notes one last time and set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. before falling into an uneasy sleep. The next thing I knew, my bedroom door was flying open. Harsh flashlights blinded me as multiple voices shouted commands. "Police! Don't move! Hands where we can see them!" I jolted awake in confusion, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear. 3 police officers stood in my room, guns drawn. The digital clock on my nightstand read 6:07 a.m. "What's happening?" I gasped, raising my trembling hands. "Haley Mitchell?" A female officer approached while the others began searching my room. "We have a warrant to search these premises based on information about illegal drug possession and distribution." "Drug distribution? There must be some mistake," I said, my voice rising in panic. The officer handed me a document. "This is the warrant. Please stay seated on the bed." I watched in horror as they methodically went through my belongings. One officer pulled books from my shelf, while another checked under my mattress. The third opened my desk drawers, emptying contents onto the floor. "Got something," announced the officer at my bookshelf. He held up a small plastic bag containing white powder, pulled from behind my row of nursing textbooks. Then he reached deeper and extracted several pills in unmarked baggies. My mind went blank with shock. "Those aren't mine. I've never seen those before in my life." The officer ignored me, continuing his search. He found another bag taped under my desk drawer, more pills and what looked like crystal meth. My nursing training helped me identify the substances, even as my brain struggled to process what was happening. My parents appeared in the doorway, my mother clutching her robe closed, my father's hand on her shoulder. "Mom, Dad, I swear I don't know where those came from. Someone put them there," I pleaded. My mother's face crumpled. "Oh, Haley, how could you?" "I didn't. I would never." I looked to my father, hoping for support, but his expression was cold and disappointed. And then I saw her. Natalie stood behind them in the hallway, her hand covering her mouth in an unconvincing display of shock. But her eyes were triumphant. For just a moment, she smirked at me before composing her features back into a mask of distress. In that instant, I knew exactly what had happened. It was Natalie. Cried out. She planted those drugs. "Haley Mitchell, you're under arrest for possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. You have the right to remain silent. We received an anonymous tip from this residence late last night," one officer explained to my parents as they led me out. "Caller said their daughter was dealing to fund a luxury lifestyle. I looked back at my family as I was guided down the stairs. My mother was sobbing into my father's chest. And behind them stood Natalie, her expression now carefully arranged into appropriate concern. But when our eyes met, I saw it again, that flash of satisfaction. They walked me through our pristine front yard to the police cruiser, neighbors peeking through windows at the spectacle. I ducked my head in humiliation as they helped me into the back seat. My last glimpse of home was Natalie standing on the porch, my parents' arms around her as if she were the victim. At the police station, they processed me like a common criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal items cataloged and placed in a paper bag. They put me in a holding cell with 2 other women. One sleeping off what appeared to be intoxication, the other silently staring at the wall. Hours later, a detective brought me to an interrogation room. "Miss Mitchell, I'm Detective Ramirez. Want to tell me about the drugs we found in your room?" "They aren't mine," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "I'm a nurse. I just graduated. I would never risk my license or career." He consulted his notes. "Almost a pound of various substances. That's not personal use. Who were you selling to? Other nurses? Hospital patients?" "No one. I wasn't selling anything. I've never even seen those drugs before this morning." I leaned forward desperately. "Please check the anonymous tip. Came from my house. It was my sister." How could I explain 24 years of jealousy and resentment to a stranger? How could I make him understand the family dynamics that had led to this moment? "She's always been jealous of me," I finally said, knowing how petty it sounded. "She has a history of substance abuse. Those were probably her drugs. You can test my hair. I've never used. You can check my phone. My bank accounts. There's nothing suspicious there." The detective made a few notes. "We'll look into it. For now, you'll be held until arraignment tomorrow morning." That night in the cell was the longest of my life. I cycled between disbelief, rage, and despair. How could Natalie do this to me? How could my parents believe I was capable of drug dealing? What would happen to my nursing career, my job offer, my future? By morning, I felt hollow, my eyes swollen from crying. At the arraignment, I pleaded not guilty. Watching my parents sit stonily in the back of the courtroom, they hadn't even approached me to talk. The judge set bail at $5,000, an amount that seemed astronomical to me, but that my parents could easily afford. I looked to them hopefully, but they averted their eyes. It was my Uncle Jim, my father's younger brother, who had always been kind to me, who stepped forward to post my bail. "Thank you," I whispered as he helped me collect my belongings. "Let's get you out of here," he said. His voice gentle but his expression troubled. "Then we can figure this out." I had no idea that figuring it out would mean discovering just how far my family's betrayal would go. Uncle Jim drove me home in silence, occasionally glancing at me with concern. I stared out the window, still struggling to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. My second interview at Massachusetts General Hospital had started 10 minutes ago. My career, the one I'd worked so hard for, was already unraveling. "You okay, kiddo?" Uncle Jim finally asked as we turned onto my parents' street. "No," I answered honestly. "I don't understand any of this." He sighed. "Your dad called me last night. He sounded, I don't know, not like himself." When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. Several garbage bags and boxes sat by the garage. As we got closer, I recognized my suitcase among them. My mother stood there, her face puffy from crying, but her expression resolute. "Your things are packed," she said flatly. "We think it's best if you don't stay here while this situation is being resolved." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Mom, you can't seriously believe I had anything to do with those drugs. I'm being set up." "Diana, this is ridiculous," Uncle Jim interjected. "You're throwing your daughter out based on accusations?" My father appeared behind her. "Jim, this is a family matter. We appreciate you helping with bail, but we've made our decision. You did this." Natalie's eyes widened in practiced innocence. "I can't believe you're blaming me for your mistakes. This is exactly what you always do." "What I always do? When have I ever blamed you for anything?" My mother intervened. "Haley, stop attacking your sister. She's upset enough as it is. She's upset. My voice rose in disbelief. I was just arrested. For something I didn't do. My father rubbed his temples. Look, I've spoken with some colleagues. If you agree to a plea deal for possession only and enter a rehab program, we might be able to get the distribution charges dropped. I stared at him, stunned. A plea deal? You want me to plead guilty to something I didn't do? I'm not going to rehab for a drug problem I don't have. The evidence is overwhelming. He continued as if I hadn't spoken. They found various substances worth thousands of dollars in your room. The prosecution will argue you were dealing to fund your lifestyle. What lifestyle? I work at a coffee shop. I drive a 10-year-old car that breaks down weekly. I wear second-hand clothes. Denial isn't helping, my mother said softly. We've been reading about addiction in high-functioning people. It explains so much about your intensity, the perfectionism, the isolation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My intensity is called working hard. Something this family has never recognized when it comes to me. Uncle Jim put a steadying hand on my shoulder. Robert, Diana, listen to yourselves. This is Haley we're talking about. The girl who volunteered at nursing homes in high school. Who worked her way through college. Who's never been in trouble in her life. People change, my father replied coldly. And apparently, we didn't know her as well as we thought. I turned to Natalie, who was watching the scene unfold with barely concealed satisfaction. Why? I asked directly. Why would you do this to me? Her expression faltered slightly before she recovered. You need help. Haley, I'm worried about you. Just then, Natalie's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, then excused herself to take a call in the kitchen. I followed quietly, stopping just outside the doorway. Yeah, it worked perfectly. I heard her say in a low voice, her tone completely different, smug, triumphant. The cops found everything. She's totally screwed. No, my parents have no idea. They actually think she's been dealing this whole time. My heart pounded as I recorded the conversation on my phone. When she hung up, I confronted her. I heard everything, I said, holding up my phone. You just admitted to setting me up. For a moment, panic flashed across her face before she composed herself. No one will believe you. That recording won't be admissible in court. Besides, it's your word against mine. And we both know who Mom and Dad always believe. I played the recording for my parents, expecting them to be shocked to finally see the truth. Instead, my father frowned. That recording is illegally obtained and proves nothing. Natalie could have been talking about something else entirely. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice breaking. Your daughter was just arrested. I've never been in trouble in my life. And you're choosing to believe I suddenly became a drug dealer? Over the much more logical explanation that Natalie, who has repeatedly tried to sabotage me, is lying? My mother looked torn for a moment before hardening her resolve. Haley, we're trying to help you. But this behavior, blaming your sister, secretly recording conversations, it only confirms our concerns. I think we've been clear, my father added. You have two options. Agree to the plea deal and rehab program. Natalie didn't even bother to come out. As we drove away, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. They chose her, I sobbed. They've always chosen her. Uncle Jim reached over and squeezed my hand. I know, kiddo. And I'm so sorry. But you're not alone in this. We're going to fight back. I didn't believe him then. How could we possibly fight this? But as we drove to his small apartment in the city, something shifted inside me. The pain of betrayal was still raw, but underneath it, something new was forming: determination. If my own parents wouldn't believe in me, I would have to believe in myself enough for all of us. I had no idea then how much I would need that determination in the weeks to come, as the betrayal would cut even deeper than I could have imagined. Uncle Jim's one-bedroom apartment in Jamaica Plain wasn't much. A far cry from my parents' spacious suburban home. He insisted I take the bedroom while he slept on the pull-out couch. The first night I lay awake staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, my mind racing between disbelief, rage, and crushing sadness. You're welcome to stay as long as you need, Uncle Jim said over coffee the next morning. I know it's not much. It's everything, I said, fighting back tears. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there yesterday. That afternoon, I received an email that felt like another punch to the gut. Massachusetts General Hospital was rescinding my job offer due to the pending criminal charges. The carefully worded message explained that while they acknowledged the presumption of innocence, the nature of the charges made my employment unsuitable at this time. I sat on Uncle Jim's worn couch, staring at my phone in disbelief. The job I'd worked so hard for gone. My nursing career potentially over before it had even begun. My family turned against me. In the space of 48 hours I'd lost everything. I can't afford a lawyer, I realized aloud. The public defender assigned to my case seemed overwhelmed and unconvinced of my innocence. Actually, Uncle Jim said, sitting beside me, I've been making some calls. Walls lined with law books and framed diplomas. Jim has told me your story, she said after introductions. I'll be honest, this is a challenging case. We can work something out. But I need to know you're committed to fighting this, because it won't be easy. For the first time since my arrest, I felt a flicker of hope. I'll do whatever it takes. Sandra's retainer still cost more than I had saved, but Uncle Jim helped cover it. Consider it an investment in justice, he said when I protested. The investigation began with Sandra's skeptical but thorough approach. She interviewed me extensively about Natalie's history, my relationship with my parents, the events leading up to my arrest. At first, I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced of my innocence. Just another lawyer seeing me as a potential drug dealer in denial. Why would your sister do this? She asked repeatedly. What would be her motivation? Jealousy, I explained. It sounds petty, but it's been a pattern our entire lives. She resents my accomplishments, my relationship with our parents. But your parents clearly favor her, Sandra interrupted, frowning. Now they do. It wasn't always that way. When we were younger, before Natalie started having serious problems, they had high expectations for both of us. But when she couldn't meet them and I could, something changed in her. Sandra's investigation began to uncover troubling patterns. She hired a private investigator who documented Natalie's regular meetings with known drug dealers in the area. We caught another break when Sandra discovered that our neighbors across the street had installed a security camera system that partially captured the view of our house. After some legal maneuvering, we obtained the footage from the night before my arrest. The grainy video clearly showed Natalie leaving the house at 1:38 a.m., meeting briefly with someone in a car, then returning. At 2:17 a.m., it showed her entering my room while I was asleep, staying for approximately 6 minutes. She was planting the drugs, I whispered, watching the footage with Sandra and Uncle Jim. This is compelling, Sandra agreed. But we still need to establish that she was the one who called in the anonymous tip. Through a forensic examination of the house phone records, we confirmed that a call had been placed to the police department's tip line at 3:24 a.m. after Natalie had visited my room, and before the police arrived with their warrant. But the most devastating evidence came from Natalie's phone records, which Sandra obtained through another court order. Text messages between Natalie and someone listed as D outlined the entire setup. Natalie: can I get the stuff tonight? D: yeah, but it's gonna cost. What you need it for anyway? Natalie: gonna solve my sister problem once and for all. D: you sure about this? It's hardcore. Natalie: she deserves it. Little Miss Perfect nursing career while I'm stuck working retail. D: your call. Meet at usual spot 130-inch. Later that night. Natalie: it's done. Planted everything. Called cops anonymous. D: she'll be in jail and my parents will finally see she's not so perfect. Reading these messages felt like having the wind knocked out of me. The calculated malice behind Natalie's actions was stunning. This wasn't an impulsive act. She had planned meticulously to destroy my life out of pure jealousy. But the worst was yet to come. As Sandra dug deeper, she uncovered something I never expected. Evidence suggesting my parents might have suspected the truth all along. In text messages between my mother and father the morning after my arrest. Mom: do you think we should talk to Natalie? Her story doesn't completely add up. Dad: absolutely not. We need to present a united front. If Haley gets off on some technicality, we'll deal with it then. Mom. But what if Haley is telling the truth? Dad. Diana, think about it. If we side with Haley and she's guilty, we've enabled a drug dealer. If we support Natalie while we figure this out, the worst case is we apologize to Haley later. Natalie is fragile right now. They had abandoned me not because they truly believed I was guilty, but because it was more convenient for their family narrative. They knew, I whispered, my hands shaking. They knew there was a chance I was innocent, and they threw me out anyway. Uncle Jim put his arm around my shoulders. I'm so sorry, Haley. That night was my lowest point. I sat on the fire escape outside Uncle Jim's apartment, watching the city lights and wondering if the fight was worth it. Even if I cleared my name legally, how could I ever recover from this level of betrayal? How could I rebuild a life when the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had failed me so completely? For a brief, dark moment, I considered giving up, taking the plea deal, going through the motions of rehab, and trying to piece together whatever life I could afterward. It would be easier than fighting a system that seemed stacked against me and confronting the painful truth about my family. But as I sat there in the cool night air, I remembered something one of my nursing professors had said. Your patients will be facing the worst days of their lives. They'll need your strength when they have none left. So find that unbreakable part of yourself now, before you need it. I realized that moment had come. I needed to find that unbreakable part of myself. Not for a patient but for me. Because if I didn't fight for myself now, no one else would. I texted Sandra. I want to take this all the way. Whatever it takes. Her reply came minutes later. That's what I was hoping you'd say. See you tomorrow. We have work to do. The next morning, I had a heart-to-heart conversation with Uncle Jim about family dynamics and self-worth that changed my perspective forever. You know, he said as we sat at his small kitchen table, I've watched the Mitchell family from the sidelines for years. Filled with books and artifacts from his travels, photos of smiling students he'd mentored over the years. I've always admired your life. That's because you recognize there are different types of success, he said. Haley, this fight isn't just about clearing your name legally. It's about freeing yourself from toxic family patterns that have defined your worth by other people's standards. His words resonated deeply. For too long, I'd been seeking validation from parents who were incapable of giving it. My worth wasn't determined by their approval or by Natalie's jealousy. That realization gave me a new kind of strength as Sandra presented our evidence to the prosecutor. I sat in her office as she laid out the text messages, security footage, and internet searches before Assistant District Attorney Marcus Benson. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he reviewed the materials. Why wasn't any of this brought to our attention earlier? He finally asked. My client had to conduct her own investigation with limited resources after being abandoned by her family. Sandra replied coolly. The real question is why the police obtained a warrant based solely on an anonymous tip without any corroborating evidence. The prosecutor rubbed his forehead. I'll need to verify all of this independently. Of course, Sandra said. In the meantime, I trust you'll be considering charges against Natalie Mitchell for filing a false police report. Faced with serious charges, he immediately turned on Natalie, confirming that she had purchased the drug specifically to plant in my room. 1 week after Sandra presented our evidence, I received a call that left me breathless. All charges against me were being dropped. The prosecutor's office issued a formal apology for the miscarriage of justice and confirmed they were pursuing charges against both Natalie and Devon. It's over, I told Uncle Jim, my voice shaking. They're dropping everything. He hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you for fighting, kiddo. But we both knew it wasn't entirely over. The legal battle might be won, but the family wounds remained raw and gaping. News of the case spread quickly through local media. Nursing graduate framed by sister in drug setup read the headline in the Boston Globe. The story detailed how a jealous sibling had nearly destroyed her sister's promising career. My phone filled with messages from former classmates and professors expressing shock and support. Massachusetts General Hospital contacted me to discuss reconsidering my application in light of the developments. Though grateful, I decided to take time before making any decisions about my career path. 3 days after the charges were dropped, my parents finally called. The conversation was brief and uncomfortable. They asked if I would meet them at their house to discuss recent events. I agreed, but only on the condition that Uncle Jim and Sandra would accompany me. Returning to my childhood home felt surreal. My mother opened the door, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and caution. My father stood in the living room, looking smaller somehow, less imposing than I remembered. "Haley," he began awkwardly, "we've been doing a lot of thinking." "I would hope so," I replied, remaining standing while they sat on the couch. "The evidence you presented, it's very convincing," he continued. "We may have jumped to conclusions." "May have," Uncle Jim interjected. "Robert, your daughter was innocent, and you threw her out on the street." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were trying to protect our family." "I am your family," I said quietly. "Or at least I was." "Of course you are," my father said quickly. "This has been a difficult time for everyone, but we can put it behind us now. You can move back home and we'll help you get back on your feet." I said firmly, "I won't be moving back. And we can't just put this behind us. You chose to believe the worst about me without evidence. You suspected Natalie was lying and sided with her anyway. You prioritized her fragility over my innocence. We made a mistake," my father admitted reluctantly. "But families forgive each other." "Forgiveness needs to be earned," I replied, her expression cycling through shock, fear, and then a practiced remorse. "Haley," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was using again, and Devin convinced me." "Stop." I cut her off. "I've read your text messages. This wasn't Devin's idea. This was calculated revenge because you couldn't stand that I was succeeding." Natalie's facade crumbled, and for once, I saw the raw truth in her eyes, the jealousy, the resentment, the emptiness that no amount of parental attention could fill. "You've always been the perfect one," she spat, her true feelings finally emerging. "Everyone thinks you're so special, so hardworking. I'm sick of living in your shadow." "Natalie," my mother gasped. "That's enough." "No, let her speak," I said. "This is the first honest thing she's said to me in years." My father intervened. "Natalie is getting help. She's agreed to enter a rehab program as part of her plea agreement." "Good," I said sincerely. "I hope it helps her." "What about you?" my mother asked tentatively. What happens now?" I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm. Now I set boundaries for the first time in my life. I won't be part of this family dynamic anymore. I'm building my own life. One where I'm valued and respected. "You can't just cut us off," my father protested. "We're your parents." "I'm not cutting you off. I'm establishing conditions for a healthier relationship. I'll consider family therapy, but only if everyone acknowledges the real issues, not just Natalie's addiction, but the enabling, the favoritism, and the unfair expectations." They looked stunned. The daughter who had always sought their approval was now setting terms. "And one more thing," I added. "I'll be testifying at Natalie's hearing. Not to seek revenge, but because the truth matters. She needs real consequences if she's ever going to change." "You can't do that," my mother pleaded. "It could affect her plea deal." "That's not my responsibility," I replied firmly. Setting boundaries wasn't about punishing my family. It was about protecting myself and breaking the toxic patterns that had defined us for too long. "You did good in there." It was easier than spending a lifetime trying to earn love that should have been unconditional all along. The road ahead wouldn't be simple. Natalie was facing charges, my career needed rebuilding, and my family relationships required fundamental restructuring. But for the first time, I was facing these challenges on my terms, not as the good daughter seeking approval, but as Haley Mitchell, defining her own worth. 6 months after the charges against me were dropped, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. Instead of working at Massachusetts General Hospital, I accepted a position at Boston City Hospital, a smaller facility with a diverse patient population and supportive staff who knew my story and still valued my skills. "Your experience gives you a unique perspective on injustice," my supervisor Jenny told me during my interview. "That kind of empathy can't be taught in nursing school. Not anyone else's." And I filled the space with plants, books, and artwork that spoke to me. For the first time, I was creating a home that reflected who I was, not who anyone expected me to be. Uncle Jim remained my rock, stopping by with homemade dinners and listening without judgment as I processed my emotions. Through him, I learned what healthy family support actually looked like. Unconditional but not enabling, supportive without smothering. You know, he said one evening as we shared takeout on my new couch, I'm seeing a different Haley these days. Different how? I asked. More authentic. Like you're finally living for yourself instead of for other people's approval. He was right. Family trauma doesn't heal overnight, she reminded me during our sessions. But acknowledging it is the first step toward breaking the cycle. I established limited, structured contact with my parents on my terms. We met once a month for coffee in a neutral location. Never their house, which still held too many painful memories. Our conversations were awkward at first, filled with weather talk and surface-level updates. But slowly we began addressing the deeper issues. I've been reading about family systems. And you're realizing you did that to Natalie and me? I asked directly. He nodded uncomfortably. Think we may have. Without meaning to. These small acknowledgments didn't erase the pain of their betrayal, but they were steps toward something new. Not the unconditional closeness I'd once craved, but a more honest relationship built on earned trust rather than obligation. Natalie's journey was more complicated. After accepting a plea deal for filing a false police report and drug possession, she entered a court-mandated rehabilitation program. During her sentencing hearing, I testified about the impact of her actions, not to punish her, but to ensure the court understood the calculated nature of what she'd done. My sister's actions weren't just about drugs, I explained to the judge. They were an attempt to destroy my career and reputation out of jealousy. I believe she needs help, but she also needs accountability. The judge sentenced her to 18 months probation and mandatory completion of the rehabilitation program, with the possibility of having the charges reduced if she complied with all conditions. 3 months into her program, Natalie asked to meet. We sat across from each other at a cafe, both nervous and guarded. My counselor says I need to make amends, she began. Is that the only reason you wanted to see me? I asked. She looked down. No. I've been doing a lot of work on myself, understanding why I resented you so much. It wasn't really about you. But the real problem was that our parents pitted us against each other, instead of supporting us both differently. She seemed startled by my insight. That's basically what my therapist said. That I was acting out because I felt like I could never measure up to you, so I stopped trying and started sabotaging instead. And I was killing myself trying to earn approval that kept moving further away, I added. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was understanding. We agreed to maintain distance while she continued her recovery, with the possibility of rebuilding a relationship in the future, if she demonstrated consistent change. At work I was thriving. The nursing director recognized my exceptional patient care and attention to detail, offering me the opportunity to help develop a new training program for recent graduates. You have a natural talent for teaching, she told me, and your perspective on overcoming adversity could be valuable to new nurses. I accepted the challenge, finding unexpected fulfillment in mentoring others. The purpose I'd always sought in nursing expanded beyond patient care, to include guiding the next generation of healthcare providers. My social circle transformed as well. Instead of isolating myself in work and study as I had for years, I formed genuine friendships with colleagues who appreciated me for who I was, not what I achieved. We went hiking on weekends, had movie nights, and volunteered together at community health clinics. To Haley, the strongest person I know. For months after Natalie entered rehab, my parents suggested a family therapy session. I approached it with caution but openness, bringing Uncle Jim for support. The therapist, Dr. Chun, created a structured environment where each person could speak without interruption. My mother went first, tearfully acknowledging how she had enabled Natalie's behavior, while holding me to impossible standards. I think I saw myself in you, Haley, she admitted. All my unfulfilled ambitions. I pushed you because I thought that's what good mothers did. And I coddled Natalie because she reminded me of all my own weaknesses. My father spoke about his struggle to connect emotionally with his daughters. I treated parenting like a business, problems to be solved, achievements to be recognized. I never learned how to just be there. When my turn came, I spoke honestly about the pain of their betrayal and my decision to prioritize my own well-being. I'm not looking for perfect parents, I told them. I'm looking for parents who can acknowledge their mistakes and respect my boundaries, who can love me for who I am, not what I achieve. It was just one session, the first small step on a long journey of family healing. But as we left, Uncle Jim squeezed my hand. Baby steps, he said. But steps nonetheless. That evening, sitting on my apartment balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on everything that had happened since that terrible morning when police officers burst into my bedroom. The journey had been painful beyond words, but through it, I had discovered truths about myself and my family that might otherwise have remained buried forever. I had learned that family support should be earned, not expected unconditionally when it becomes toxic. That setting boundaries isn't selfish but essential for healthy relationships. That sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're born into. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth wasn't defined by others' approval, or by checking boxes of achievement. It came from within, from my integrity, resilience, and capacity for growth, even in the face of betrayal. The future remained uncertain. My relationship with my parents was fragile but evolving. Natalie's recovery would be a long process with no guaranteed outcome. My career path had diverted from my original plan but opened unexpected doors. Yet for the first time, that uncertainty didn't terrify me. I was building a life based on my own choices rather than others' expectations. A life where authenticity mattered more than perfection, and where healthy boundaries protected me from the toxicity of the past. As the last light of day faded, I took a deep breath of the cooling evening air. The broken pieces of my old life hadn't simply been put back together. They had been transformed into something stronger, more beautiful, and entirely my own. I would love to hear from you in the comments about how you've dealt with family betrayal or established boundaries in your own life. Have you ever had to stand up to toxic family dynamics? What helped you find your strength? Your stories matter and can help others facing similar struggles. Please like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Remember,